Okay, so I've had a lot of questions about how to connect the assignments that we're doing with GitHub. So before you get too deep into it, here are some things you can do to get started. So first off, make sure that you have a registered GitHub account. And if you want a guide of all these things to do, I would follow this book, Happy Git with R. In fact, I'll be using a lot of things I've learned from this one throughout. So it's very comprehensive and gives you lots of different solutions for how to connect with it. And it's written for an R user. So you're going to see that some of these packages are pretty useful. Now, not all of them need to be used by you. So I'm going to show you some ways that we can apply them and maybe some shortcuts if you don't really want to participate in that. So first thing you'll want to do is create a GitHub account. So most of you will probably have done this by now. Once you're in GitHub, you can, hopefully create your profile. If you're a student already, and you have a GitHub, but maybe it's not connected with UW, one thing you can do is change the settings and add your email so that it matches here. Now, there are ways to add multiple emails. And in the meantime, you can make this your profile if you'd like, or having trouble with that. But that's one way to approach it if you're running into trouble. Um, as you continue on, make sure you have R and RStudio connected. I have a whole slide or a whole page dedicated to that, and install Git. So this is another program that helps us to run code in a collaborative way. One thing you'll notice is that most operating systems have Git in the background now. So this isn't as common as it used to be. Um, so one way you can check is you go to your terminal. Oh, excuse me. Let's go to our terminal. This might be called something else in your computer. I'm using a Mac. And what you can do is check for Git. And hopefully it gives you something like this, a Git version when you put in that command. And if nothing comes up or doesn't know what Git is, it's probably a sign that you should install Git. Follow instructions here. When you add a Git config, so this is where you're starting to introduce yourself to Git. You want to tell it who you are and what your name is and what your email address is. This will help you write in a way that is identifiable to you as you add and make changes and delete code. You can say, this person did it. Um, and it's a way to kind of like sign your work, right? If you're doing a masterpiece. So the ways you can do this are by following the instructions of introducing yourself to Git. This is actually really easy with the Happy Git with R. They have a couple really quick lines. So to me, this is still one of the fastest ways. If you want to use a shell, you can either use the terminal here, or since most of you are probably R users now, one thing you can do is instead of using the console, as we have so often become accustomed, which talks in the R language, notice here, we can switch over to terminal. And so now we're speaking into the terminal and notice that I'm in my workspace in a folder. So this is a directory, but it doesn't really matter where we're going to be because we're going to operate on the git config. And I'm doing this manually. Let me double check that I have this spelt out right. So git config global username, and then in quotes, I'm going to have my username. So in this case, I'm going to do quote Caleb true. Now, what's great about this is you can speak directly to terminal. Some things are frustrating though. You won't be able to copy and paste like you normally can. You're really limited to the D-pad and deleting and adding things that way. But what's nice is if you make a mistake, you can just hit up one and usually it brings you back to the latest code so that you can alter it. So in addition, I'm going to change the user email. So here I can add my user email. Easy. Now, again, when you're working in here, um, this will help you kind of confirm everything. So let's say I'm going to press up on the D-pad again, and I'm going to type out list, and this should give me the commands for, oh, I forgot the dashes. There you go. So this helps confirm that all my information's in there. It's a good way to check. So now that I've added my Git config, I showed you actually the manual way, which is the same as introduce yourself to Git. Now it's time to add an SSH key. So what is an SSH key? This is a way of writing things with security. So to do this, let's go to, again, we can follow instructions in Happy Git with R. I'm actually going to go to GitHub, and it's quite easy if we know where to look. So I'm going to zoom in here so it's a little easy on the screen record. Let's get rid of some of this here. And you're going to notice that I have my status here. I am in a single sign-on. This will help me get into University of Washington organization. So you might not have that because you have different privileges at this point. So to change all this, I want to go to my user and change my settings. So you can click on it that way. I can also go directly to here and change the settings this way. Actually, I guess I was right the first time. This is what I'm looking for. So in your settings, you're going to notice all this extra information. And down here, you have access, SSH keys. So SSH keys, they're kind of like the secret handshake for your computer. It allows your computer and GitHub to know that each other are the right person with the secret code word. So if somebody knows your secret handshake, you can probably guess that they're in the right club. And in a way, it helps you communicate securely. So we're going to create a new SSH key. Or actually, we're not going to do that yet, but eventually we will. Excuse me. So in order to get this started, let's go back to our getting started with Git. So to do this, there's a couple different ways. I actually prefer this the wizard that comes with R. So let's go back to console, and we're going to go actually to view. We're going to show. So I kind of like this view because it helps me feel a little more stable, and it's what you're going to be working in a lot. And I'm also going to minimize this because I don't like that. Okay, so let's go here, and I'm going to go to my global options. This is another place where you can alter the Git settings. So here, you're going to notice that there's a lot of different ways that you can articulate your work through Git. This is the one that I'm going to use. So we're going to create an SSH key. And in this, I can create a passphrase. So it's going to store this in this document. If you follow along the Happy Git with R, it's going to explain a lot more of this and even how to do this manually. It really doesn't take too many lines of terminal code, but I like this wizard because it gives us a little bit of security in knowing where things are when we come back to find them. So you can add a passphrase. This is totally optional. So let's create that now. And as you can see, I already have one, but that's okay. So this is your public private key. You do not want to make this public or create videos that get shared widely with people. Um, but this is kind of what we're looking at. So this is my secret handshake, so to speak. This is another version of my secret handshake that creates some nice, pretty art. Um, and if I want to view my public key, I can click on that. Now, this is the part that I'm going to copy. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this back to my GitHub settings. I'm going to create a new SSH key. And I can title this something like making a SSH key for video. Now, obviously, that's kind of redundant. Usually what you want to type here is your, what's specific to your device. So for instance, this is a MacBook Pro from work. There we go. And if I paste that here, I paste that key. Again, this is the public key. The way to tell is it starts with this, and then it has a bunch of what we would call gibberish, but this is a language that the computer knows how to sign things with your secret handshake. And then it has not only my user, but also some information about my computer's name as I've identified it here. So once I have all that, I'm good to go. I'm going to add my SSH key. And you're going to notice that it shows up down here on my list. You might not have any on here yet. Now, this is where we can start to configure things like sign-on to organizations. You probably don't have any of these yet, but we'll come back to that in a sec. So you are further down the line here. You added a SSH key, and look at that. We've already added a public SSH key to the GitHub. Fantastic. Now, both of those are covered in chapter 10, setup for SSH key. The manual way is also pretty easy, but that's okay. There's also commands in a Git package, or excuse me, an R package using the Happy Git with R, which will do this quite easily as well. So up next, we are going to think about how to accept our assignment. So let's say we have our assignment, we want to select it, and we are going to go choose it. So let's go find my assignments. And I am going to go find one that I really want to do. So let's say I'm going to where's my homework? There it is, ggplot basics. So maybe this is the one I'm working on now. Actually, since this is your first assignment, you're probably going to be working on first R Markdown using GitHub. Now, this has its own instructions. There's a lot of guides for students using GitHub Classroom, so feel free to read those. It never hurts to learn more because Git is one of those things where you're going to end up helping other people and they're going to have different devices or using it for different purposes that aren't your classroom. So this is a great way to kind of get involved. Now, you'll probably have different instructions than this particular quarter does. But I click on this, it's going to ask me a few questions. Since I've already had this before, I'm ready to go. I've accepted my first assignment. The assignment is ready in my repo. And you're going to notice that this has some particular sign here. Now, when I click on it, it's going to ask me to log in. So this is the part where if you have trouble with this, it's probably because you need to activate some organizational permission. Which goes back to changing settings in your GitHub. Don't be afraid to ask questions and get help. That's totally normal for these kinds of things. So this is my GitHub repo. I can see the code. I can see areas like issues and pull requests, and even my settings for this repo. And as I scroll down, I can see what my assignment is. Here's the README file. This has all the instructions I need for this assignment here. So it's going to tell me how I can find my assignment and what I'm going to need to change, including the different parts here. And if I follow instructions, making commits all along the way, I should be fine. So I can start to begin this assignment. one thing I can do is actually bring this into my R platform. So to do that, I'm going to use this SSH clone. Normally, it's going to look for HTTPS. This is your basic web URL. I prefer this one, the SSH. Again, this is using your password protected key. So it's going to behave more like a secret handshake than the other one, which might require you to sign in and out frequently. So let's go over here. I'm done using this. I'm ready for that. So now we want to bring this into our GitHub into R. So how are we going to do that? Well, there's a couple ways. First, I can click this one here. This is create a project. I don't like this icon because it's so small. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to click on File, New Project. And you're going to notice there's a bunch of different options here. New directory, existing directory, or version control. Git is a version control perspective. So let's click on that. And look, there's an option for Git. So this allows me to clone a Git repo, which is exactly what we want to do for this assignment. So I am going to take that code and I'm going to copy it. So I can copy this onto my clipboard, go back to R and paste it here. So I'm going to do Command V and voila, Control V for some users. There it is. So I'm going to name this something so it's easy to identify. My first RMD, that's R Markdown. And I can open this in a new session if I want, but that's not necessary. So let's create the project. And you'll notice I have an error here. It's not unusual to have errors. The important thing is that we read the errors here. So organization has enabled or enforced SAML SSO. So since I've been doing this a while, I know that this is the single sign-on security, which means that it's related to me being a user in this particular space. So to access this repo, you must use HTTPS with a personal access token and paraphrase that can be authorized for this organization. Okay, so we're running into some problems. This one actually wants my HTTPS remote. And I can try to find some other ways to get around this. In particular, though, I think what I want to do is go to my settings and make sure that I have authorized that SSH into the organization. So remember I alluded to this earlier, that you might not see any organizations pop up for your SSH. Well, this is why it's important. Notice that one of the options here is configure SSO. So if I scroll down to the particular class I'm working through, which one was it? Oh, this one. It's going to ask me to sign on to UW, and notice that I'm going to have some new credentials. And now my SSH key is authorized. So hopefully this will work here. There might be some other ones that I can join, but I think for now that's the one that will help solve my problem. So let's try this again. We'll do the same thing. We're going to close this. It didn't bring in anything, so there's no news happening. And let's go to new projects. I'm going to go to new directory, existing directory, version control, Git. I'm going to paste that same SSH key again. Excuse me, not key, but URL, the one from that says git at github.com : and then the list of my repo, and then ends in Git. I'm going to call this my first RMD. And now I'm ready to go. So let's create the project and let's see if it works that time. And voila, look at that. It's so smooth. Now it's going to tell me to update. Yes, you should update. Unfortunately, I don't have time for that now. So, but just bad practice to avoid those. So let's go into our new platform. Again, I'm going to change this view so I can see the source. Okay, so now it looks like that nice little four square grid that I like. And notice that we have a new tab here. This was not here before, so I have a Git tab. And what's beautiful about this is where all of my code can be tracked. So if I go to my R Markdown, um, let's say I want to make this an exclamation point and make it exciting title here. So let's save this, and you'll notice that now this document has changed. Well, notice that Git is noticing that I modified this. And so in order to keep track of this and send it back to GitHub, let's go look real quick. Right now, GitHub just sees that um, that I have pulled this down, but it hasn't given me anything update. So this hasn't been changed since the assignment was created. And so there's 5 commits here. And it doesn't look like I've really done anything yet. So I want to start making changes. So to do that, I got to start adding things on my work here. And then as I save the file, it's saving to my computer, right? But it's not really talking with GitHub. So to do that, first I want to stage it, and then I'm going to commit it. And this is another view. This window here will help me see what I changed. So if I unstage this, it's not going to save these changes. If I stage it, it's gonna note these changes. Now this red up top is going to be what's deleted. And if you see the space here, that represents where it was added. So there's a new line number 2, and it's the same thing, except instead of the period, I have an exclamation. So adding an exclamation point. So what I like to do is be very descriptive when I'm writing my commit messages so that when I go back in time, I can see what I changed and when. So let's commit here. And I added an exclamation point, and I'm going to close this. And notice that I have 1 commit. So we're going to check back at here. Has anything happened? I can even refresh my page. Nope, nothing yet. So I wrote the commit, but it's not showing up. What the heck? Well, that's because when I'm at this stage, your branch is ahead of the origin/main by 1 commit. So I forgot the last step, which is to push it. So pushing is a very important step in Git because it allows us to send information back to the GitHub. And now when I refresh this, we should see 6 commits. Look at that. And now I've added the exclamation point. And not only that, but it sees what file I added it in and which lines I changed. Now, this is really important because as you continue to code, you can see a record of all of the things that you changed. And they're stored in these commits, and they're connected to your identity as a GitHub user and as a programmer, as a developer. So that's kind of the quick lesson there. The other thing I'll say is it's important to also pull, right? So let's say somebody goes in here and they really love your code and they actually want to change something themselves. So they're going to go to the RMD and notice that even here I can see on this web page what's going on, and I can even edit this file. Another way to make changes is actually go in and change this directly. I can even upload new files. But let's say I was like, this is really cool. I'm going to commit changes. So notice I added some more exclamations, adding more excitement. The title. Okay. So notice it's descriptive. It's clear what I'm changing. This is a good one to do. And I'm going to commit this change through the web page. But notice that this isn't going to show up on my end here. I only have 1 exclamation. So watch what happens though when I pull this. I got some more information here about what changed, and it's going to start fast forwarding to the newest version. And look at that. Now I have this. So pulling and pushing is an essential part of making sure that our code works and that we're collaborating with others who are also pushing and pooling at as they develop code. Using things like branching or forks is another way that you can continue to build on your skills in Git, to create kind of more specific changes for functional units rather than line changes or, chunk changes.